With the Game Awards just around the corner and with the high probability of Requiem showcasing a new trailer at this event, I figured now would be the perfect time to revisit my wildest predictions I've had or heard about since the game was first revealed at Summer Game Fest. While I wasn't the first to talk about every single theory or prediction in this video, a lot of these I have mentioned a few times throughout the year, and now that we are getting closer to the game releasing, I want to double down on the wildest and most insane theories that I have about the game that I actually believe will turn out to be true. For the record, I'll be avoiding the most obvious theories and predictions, like how Spencer is the villain of the game and how the stalker enemy is probably Alyssa Ashcroft, mostly because I've said as much multiple times and you guys probably heard enough about those theories. Instead, I'm primarily focusing on random predictions that not many people are talking about, or at the very least hasn't been a major topic of debate since the game was revealed earlier this year. Before we get started though, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel for more survival horror content and Resident Evil Requiem news. Also hit that like button if you enjoyed today's topic. Anyway, my name is Ruben with Nerdspace Games, and here are 10 insane predictions about Resident Evil Requiem that I think will probably happen. Number 1, Spencer versus Bailey. When it comes to the main villain of Resident Evil Requiem, the two biggest theories as to who it will be is either Oswald E. Spencer, founder of Umbrella, or Brandon Bailey, the founder of the Connections. I'll briefly talk about these guys a little bit because I'm sure you've already heard about them multiple times by now, but Oswald E. Spencer is the founder of Umbrella, and he was killed by Wesker prior to the events of RE5. However, Village revealed that he had a relationship with Mother Miranda prior to establishing the Umbrella Corporation, meaning that he had access to the Megamycete network, essentially a hive mind in which anybody connected to it can have their consciousness uploaded into it even after death and resurrected at a later date. As for Bailey, he's technically been around since RE5. As it was revealed, he was the apprentice of James Marcus, and he conducted his research in Africa until he founded the Connections, the company behind developing Evelyn and researching the mold created from the Megamycete. He was thought to have been killed by one of Spencer's mercenaries per a diary entry in RE5, but Zoe Baker revealed via a file that the BSAA and Chris believe that Bailey is still alive and his whereabouts are currently unknown. Now, both individuals had strong connections to Umbrella and therefore the Raccoon City incident. Therefore, both characters have been talked about a lot as being the main villain of RE9. My theory is that Resident Evil Requiem won't only feature one of these guys as the main villain, but maybe both of them. See, I essentially think that RE9 will feature not only Spencer and his BOWs as the main villain of the game, but also feature Brandon Bailey in the Connections to some degree, as the two will both be competing to obtain whatever it is that they need from Grace's blood. So think Simmons and Carla from Resident Evil 6. While both of them were main villains in the game, they were clearly on opposite sides of each other, with each one doing horrible things to achieve their own goals with their own motivations. Number 2, multiple stalker enemies. I know, stalker enemy fatigue in RE games is legit an issue that a lot of hardcore fans have come to really dislike about the modern games of the series. With that being said, I feel like stalker enemies creates a sense of anxiety that is unmatched by traditional jump scares. So with that in mind, we already know that there will be at least one stalker enemy in the form of the Hag in RE9. While there have been many theories as to who this creature could be, some thinking Lisa Trevor, while others believe it to be Alyssa Ashcroft, one thing that a lot of us can agree on is that she looks absolutely horrifying. Here's the thing though, I don't think this Hag, or whatever you want to call this monster, will be the only stalker enemy in the game. As I'm sure a lot of you are already aware of by now, Capcom has confirmed that there will be one other playable protagonist in the game. Most of the rumors point towards Leon, but regardless of who this is, I don't think that they'll encounter the Hack stalker enemy at all in their sections of the game. In fact, I actually believe that they might have a stalker enemy of their own, as this protagonist will primarily be exploring the ruins of Raccoon City and will instead be dealing with some other BOW tracking them down throughout the streets of RC. There's not really much to go on in terms of this theory, but it's something that I've been thinking about a lot more recently. Especially if the Hack turns out to be Alyssa Ashcroft, then this beast seems to be exclusive to Grace's section of the game, and if this secondary protagonist will indeed get around the same amount of playtime as Grace does, then I wouldn't be too shocked to see another BOW, similar to like a Nemesis or a Mr. X, chasing the second protagonist throughout the ruins of Raccoon City. Number 3, Leon Kennedy will be revealed at the Game Awards. Listen, I get it, the community is pretty split on Leon, with half of us wanting other protagonists to be featured in this game, like a Chris Redfield or a Jill Valentine, while the other half would die to see Leon again. But the fact of the matter is that regardless of our individual opinions on his character, Leon is one of the fan favorites of the series, and this guy prints money for Capcom. So it makes perfect sense for his character to return, especially when you consider the fact that the main setting of the game is Raccoon City, a major part in Leon's journey in the series series, as it's where his story began. But predicting that Leon will be the second protagonist in Resident Evil Requiem is a bit boring, and it's not really a bold or insane prediction considering the fact that Capcom is fooling nobody by hiding him from the trailers thus far. But here's the bold prediction I want to make, to the point where I'm like 90% sure about this, and that is that Leon will be revealed to us at the Game Awards this Thursday. Yeah, I'm pretty confident about this for multiple reasons. For one, as I said earlier, Leon prints money for Capcom, and going by that logic, it really doesn't make much sense at all for Capcom to keep Leon out of the marketing for RE9 if he is indeed in the game. On top of that, there's been a lot of teases and rumors and even leaks pointing towards the fact that Leon will probably be in the game to some degree. As to why I think he'll be revealed at the Game Awards of all places, that's simple. Capcom clearly has some sort of relationship or deal with Jeff Keighley. I mean, RE9 was first revealed at Summer Game Fest of all places, not a PlayStation Direct, which is normally where it's revealed at, or Tokyo Game Show. Summer Game Fest, a Keighley event. So, continuing that trend, it wouldn't surprise me one bit to see RE9 reveal the famous rookie cop himself at Keighley's biggest event of the year, the Game Awards. Also, post-recorder Ruben here, Jeff Keighley just tweeted out earlier this evening right after I finished editing this video, because of course he did, and confirmed that we will be getting a new look at Resident Evil Requiem at the Game Awards this Thursday. So yeah, RE9 will definitely be there. Now the question is, will Leon be there? What do you guys think? Number 4, Hunnigan and Ada will be in Requiem. On the topic of Leon being revealed at the Game Awards, I can't imagine a Resident Evil game that features Leon as Kennedy, but not the two closest women in his life currently, Hunnigan and Ada Wong. Hunnigan will of course return as Leon's contact and will help him gather information and provide him with key details that'll help him succeed in whatever mission he has in Raccoon City. The two of them have been together in just about every single game or movie featuring Leon since she was first introduced in RE4. As for Ada Wong, clearly there's an unspoken bond between these two. While they have yet to be romantically involved, obviously they have a deep connection to each other and are willing to betray their own superiors to some degree to protect each other. I mean, we've seen this multiple times, specifically with Ada in RE2 and RE4 and Leon in RE6. So if we are looking at a Resident Evil game that follows Leon as he returns to Raccoon City, I would be extremely shocked if Ada Wong didn't appear as well, considering Raccoon City is where they first met. As to why she appears, a lot of theories have been pointing towards her potentially working with the connections. Actually, I'd love to hear your own theories as to how and why Ada Wong could appear in Resident Evil Requiem, so drop them down below in the comments. Number 5, post-credits or a cameo of Jill Valentine. Okay, so maybe this is just a bit of copium for my girl Jill Valentine, but I do believe Jill will be featured in RE9 to some degree. Now, I don't think she will be playable, not at first at least, but I do think she'll be involved in the story in one of two ways that ultimately teases something in the future with her character. The first and probably more likely scenario is that Jill appears at the end of the game to save Grace, or she's featured in some sort of post-credit scene. Something like this could set Jill up as a playable protagonist in a future DLC, for example. The only thing that works against this theory is if Ada Wong is indeed returning, as if she returns, then future DLC will probably be dedicated to her instead, similar to Separate Ways. Still, I think there's a possibility that we get a small cameo from Jill to some degree. It could be Leon or Hunnigan reaching out to her, Chris sending her to Raccoon City after learning about Grace and Leon being in trouble there, or perhaps she's just there to retrieve some sort of evidence. Regardless of the reason, I just don't see Capcom returning to Raccoon City without finding a way to feature Jill in some capacity, as outside of maybe Leon, her past with Raccoon City is arguably the deepest in my opinion. Number 6, the Outbreak Survivors will be Spencer's experiments. Before I talk about this next entry, I want to give a major shout out to my boy Conjureline for actually mentioning this theory to me the other day, and after thinking about it for a bit, I actually really love this idea. So yeah, again, go subscribe to Conjureline, because again, he's the one that really came up with this theory. I'm just talking about it. Anyways, I kind of want to run with this idea a little bit and add some of my own twists and turns to it, so here we go. Based on everything we know about Resident Evil Requiem, it seems that the survivors of the Outbreak games could potentially be a major part in the story. Specifically, their antibodies, since the survivors of the Outbreak games all took the Daylight vaccine. Now, this is a drug that has only appeared in the Outbreak games, but essentially this vaccine is able to cure any and all effects of the T-virus in living victims. There's potentially more to this vaccine in terms of side effects, but the main thing to know is that the main villain of the game appears to be after Grace Ashcroft because she's the daughter of Alyssa, one of the survivors that took the vaccine in the Outbreak games. So here's what Conjureline and I have been talking about, and I actually really love his idea. What if the major boss fights in the game, at least the ones that Grace faces off against, are all Outbreak characters that survived the Raccoon City incident and took the daylight vaccine? It does make a lot of sense when you think about it. The main antagonist of RE9 clearly wants Alyssa and Grace because of something in their blood, which would mean that he probably wanted all of the survivors as well to experiment on them. So what if he captured all of the Outbreak characters, including Alyssa's body after she apparently was killed in the trailers, and he experimented on them and their blood, turning them into different monsters? I mean, a lot of people, myself included, already believe that Alyssa is the Hag Stalker enemy. So it's really not too far-fetched to think that most or even all of the Outbreak survivors have been turned into monsters as well, you know? To add a little more to that theory, Grace reacts strangely to some of the people in the trailer, like when she is looking at this woman through some sort of glass. Maybe that's Cindy. I know it's a dark and tragic theory to think about since there were a lot of fan favorites from those games, including my girl Yoko and Kevin, who had a cameo in RE3 remake already, but I can definitely see why this mad scientist would want them if he's after the antibodies created from the daylight vaccine. So yeah, this theory makes a lot of sense to me, and again, shout out to Conjureline for this one. Number 7, Nathan Dempsey is not an evil person. So I might be the only person alive to have a little faith in Grace's superior officer, Nathan Dempsey, but I personally don't believe that this guy is corrupt or evil at all. I know there's a lot of red flags surrounding him, to the point where I initially thought he was going to be a bad guy myself. From one of the shadowy figures hovering over Grace during her operation, somewhat looking like him, to the point that he was the one to send Grace to Renwood Hotel, the place where she gets kidnapped at. There's obviously a lot of reasons to really suspect the guy, but honestly, I just think he's a red herring to some degree. For one, the whole corrupt and evil superior government official thing has been done multiple times in the series already. Albert Wesker, Chief Irons, Derek Simmons, the list really goes on and on and on. Having another high-ranking official betray the main character is just too repetitive and too predictable for my liking, and I just really hope that Capcom tries to be a little more original than that. Instead, my hope is that Capcom recognizes this common trope in this series and plays off of this a little by using him as a distraction or a red herring to make us think he's the one that's betraying Grace and getting her kidnapped, when in reality it's just someone else completely. I know, maybe I'm being a little too hopeful here, but I'm really just hoping that Capcom does not continue the same old trope that we've seen multiple times now and pulls a fast one on us instead. Number 8, Nikolai Is Alive. This is a theory that I've talked about long before Resident Evil Requiem was revealed at Summer Game Fest, but I've always been on the side of Nikolai, a villain in RE3, is someone that is actually still alive and well, at least in the remake universe. The remake of RE3 changed a lot of weird things regarding his backstory and his death. Instead of us directly watching him die or even killing him ourselves, like in the original game, Jill and Carlos choose to shoot him and leave him for dead on a rooftop. Now, obviously, Raccoon City was blown up a few moments after they left him, and considering that Jill and Carlos just barely made it out themselves after they left, chances are pretty slim for Nikolai's survival, you know? But this is Nikolai that we're talking about, and I wouldn't be too surprised if he somehow had a backup plan and a backup plan for his backup plan that ultimately helped him escape the city before it blew up. Plus, there's the whole situation with his backstory. In the original game, Nikolai is a monitor that works for Umbrella directly by gathering metadata on Nemesis and other BOWs, while also destroying evidence and retrieving important resources for Umbrella. However, what's actually pretty interesting in the remake is that Nikolai appears to be collecting this information and metadata for a different employer. Granted, this employer is never mentioned by him, thanks to Jill ruining any chance of us finding out who he was actually working for, courtesy of this pretty badass quote, I have to admit.
You're a fool! If I die, you'll never find out the truth.
I don't mind a little detective work.
But with a tease like that, it just doesn't seem likely that his story is over yet. Some theories point towards Nikolai's employer being Wesker or even Brandon Bailey and the connections, but regardless of who they were, I think Nikolai has a solid chance at appearing in Resident Evil Requiem. In fact, I think the hooded man in the trailers is actually Nikolai, and the man in the goggles is Oswald E. Spencer. I don't have much to go on with this theory other than the fact that the dude's smile looks vaguely similar to Nikolai's smile, but something about this character just screams Nikolai for me, so honestly, I won't be shocked at all when he turns out to be a mercenary for a hire working for Spencer or Bailey in RE9. Number 9, there will be a public demo. If I mentioned this about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I'm sure this prediction wouldn't really be that wild of a prediction, considering the fact that just about every single modern Resident Evil game has featured a public demo at some point now. Despite saying that though, recently the producer of Resident Evil Requiem went on record during an interview claiming that currently Capcom has no plans on releasing a pre-launch public demo. This seems a bit odd considering the fact that 1, every single RE game dating all the way back to Resident Evil 6 has received a pre-launch demo, and 2, there's already a demo build of the game that was playable to the public at major gaming events like at Gamescom earlier this year. With that in mind, it really doesn't make any sense for Capcom to not release a pre-launch demo to draw in more hype for their upcoming survival horror game. So even though I'm just a small and humble content creator that will probably get access to the game at the same time as all of you guys watching this video right now, I'm gonna go on a limb and say that I don't think this statement by the producer Resident Evil Requiem is actually true, or at the least I don't think it will stand. His exact words were that there are currently no plans to make a public demo available pre-launch. That doesn't mean that it's not something that can change before the launch of RE9. Also, him saying that they don't have time to work on a new demo and instead want to focus on getting the game completed is an interesting choice of words too, as maybe he just means that there won't be a new demo available for the game pre-launch other than the one that's been available at every major gaming convention this year since Gamescom. Regardless, I just find it hard to believe that RE9 will be the first mainline Resident Evil game in over a decade to not feature a pre-launch demo. So yeah, I'm going to go against what Capcom themselves have claimed and predicted, that we will indeed get a public demo. I know, kind of dumb to go against the executive producer of the game, but I feel strongly about this, nerds. Number 10, there will be a third playable protagonist. According to the media that saw the gameplay reveal of RE9 at Summer Game Fest, there was a Capcom rep that also confirmed a second playable protagonist for the game and also confirmed that this character would feel more action focused compared to Grace's sections of the game. Obviously, fans and creators alike assume that this character will be the rookie cop, Leon S. Kennedy, as he returns to Raccoon City to explore the now ruins of the city that changed his life forever. However, I want to go one step farther and say that Leon, or whoever this second main protagonist of the game is, won't be the only other character playable outside of Grace. And yeah, I'm not referring to DLC, but rather the main campaign itself. See, while I do think the player will split time equally between Grace and the second protagonist, I also think we'll get a third character that will feature a short playable section to some degree in the main story. As to who this character is or when we'll be playing as them, well, that's a little harder to predict. My first thought, and this is honestly probably the most likely scenario, is that maybe we'll play as Alyssa Ashcroft in a flashback sequence prior to her death as she's uncovering the hidden truth of Raccoon City. Think Mia's flashback sequence in Resident Evil 7. But it's also possible that a different character will get some playtime as well. For example, if Leon is the second main protagonist of the game, then there's a small possibility that we'll see a small section in the game in which we play as Ada Wong, similar to what we got in Resident Evil 2. However, I lean more towards the flashback sequence featuring Alyssa, mostly because I can see Ada Wong being saved for a future DLC, similar to several ways for Resident Evil 4 Remake. I'd love to know your thoughts though. Do you think we'll get a third playable character outside of Grace and the second main protagonist? And if so, who do you think it will be? But yeah, that does it for this episode of Nerdspace Games. Hit up the comments and let me know what you think of my list. Do you believe any of my wild and insane theories, or do you think I'm pretty stupid for even considering most of these predictions for Resident Evil Requiem? Also, what's your biggest and most wild prediction for Resident Evil Requiem that nobody's talking about? I'd love to grab a handful of them from the comment section and do a separate video on my favorites, so be sure to drop your predictions down below. Anyway, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my channel for more survival horror content and also news on Resident Evil Requiem. Plus, leave a like on today's video if you enjoyed today's topic. But thanks for watching, and as always, I'll catch you guys on the next episode of Nerdspace Games. Take care.